Will St Helena ever get a flight to London? After reporting on Titan Airways' medical relief flight from London to St Helena recently, it brought up the question of whether a regular service between the United Kingdom and the isolated island would ever make sense. The arrival of Titan Airways Airbus A318-100 marked the first time an Airbus aircraft has landed at St Helena and now has the locals all talking about a possible air link to Europe. Adding to the speculation was the fact that Titan had its head of training, Captain Dave Cox, piloting the aircraft, and that once the cargo was offloaded, several training flights took place. Before we talk more about the training flights, you need to understand a little bit more about St Helena and why the British government decided to build an airport on the island. First discovered by Portuguese explorers in 1502, the uninhabited island was ideally positioned as a stopping point for ships travelling between the Far East and Europe. St Helena's importance faded after the opening of the Suez Canal in 1879, leaving just vessels travelling to and from South Africa stopping off at the tiny island. During a period when the British East India Company ran St Helena, settlers arrived on the island with their descendants now making up the British Overseas Territory's 4,500-strong population. St Helena's most famous resident was Napoleon Bonaparte, who in 1815 was exiled to the island by the British to live out his life thousands of miles from Europe. When the last ocean liner to dock at St Helena stopped sailing in 1977, St Helena was effectively cut off from the outside world. Now, with the island completely isolated, the British government stepped in by supplying a hybrid cargo passenger ship. This ship, aptly named the RMS St Helena, would sail 5 days from Cape Town to St Helena and then on to Ascension Island. In the early 2000s, it was becoming evident that the RMS Helena was starting to get old and would need to be replaced. After looking into the cost of a new ship, the government back in the United Kingdom thought that St Helena would be better served by air rather than sea. Creating a new airport where there has never been one before is severe enough, but building one on a remote South Atlantic island with not much existing infrastructure was a mammoth task. Eventually, after years of work, the airport opened in 2016 and was ready to receive its first commercial flight. Comair, a South African-based franchisee operating its aircraft in British Airways livery, was given the contract to fly to St Helena, but first wanted to fly an implementation flight to be sure all was well. Unfortunately, the Boeing 737-800 used for the flight experienced wind shear while attempting to land, forcing the pilots to abort the landing and go around for another shot. Now, while coming to land for a second time, the wind shear once again made the aircraft wobble, but it managed to land safely. When coming in to land from the north, it was now apparent that wind shear was going to be a significant issue. To combat this, they decided to have planes approach the airport from the south, only to find out this too was problematic. On St Helena, the wind is nearly always blowing from the south end of the runway, which meant planes would have to land with a tailwind. Given the short length of St Helena Airport's runway, 1,950 metres or 6,398 feet, aircraft like the 737 would have to be very light to ensure an adequate stopping distance. This could require limiting the number of passengers and cargo. When Comair crunched the numbers, they found out that the flights from Johannesburg to St Helena would never be profitable and pulled out of the deal. Privately owned Airlink came up with a plan to fly once a week to St Helena with a stopover in Walvis Bay, Namibia, using an Embraer E190-100 IGW. In general, the weekly flights have been a success, but have still not brought the number of tourists that St Helena was hoping to see. Now, however, following the chartered Titan Airways flight and the subsequent test flights, Saints, as the islanders call themselves, are once more talking about a direct link with London. If the A318 could land at London City Airport, it would have no problem landing on St Helena. Currently, the aircraft registration number GEUNB is configured in an all-business 32-seat layout, but could be converted to carry more passengers if needed. On the Titan Airways flight, the plane stopped at Kotoka International Airport, ACC, in Accra, Ghana, to refuel and could use this stopover for future flights between the United Kingdom and St Helena. Getting people and things to and from the middle of nowhere costs a great deal of money, making it uneconomical to provide an air link to the island without subsidies from the British government. This, of course, could be up for negotiation should Titan Airways be thinking about flying to St Helena from its base at London Stansted. Did you know that we publish over 175 stories every single week on simpleflying.com? Be sure to check the link in the description for more great stories just like this. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe before you go.